Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above Bar podcast. It's your host, Sean. We've bellied up to the bar here on this 22nd day of July. Look at that. I got the date actually right, folks. And just so everyone knows, it was a national holiday on Monday. If you didn't realize it, two of the most important things to ever happen in America happened on that day. One is man walked on the moon for the first time, July 20th, 1969. And for all you whack jobs who think we didn't, I think you're a whack job. We walked on the moon. Suck it up, Buttercup. And then I was born in July in 1976 on the same day. So why not celebrate my birthday with somebody who deserves to be celebrated herself? We're talking about positive psychology and really getting into the ideas. Do our personal freedoms still matter in life? Does it matter? Or have we been inundated with all these other things? So joining us all the way from Jersey, she's coming from Jersey, all the way down there, it's Dr. Barbara. Hold on, Doc. Don't say anything yet. I forgot to pull your media up. Like I had all this keyed up and then I lost my spot again. Coming from us all the way down at the Jersey Shore herself, it's Dr. Barbara Becker Holstein.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Not too shabby of a lot. I do my best.
Wonderful.
Right? So Doc and I are going to be talking about, really, is it worth the fight for your personal freedoms, or have too many things been taken from us, and how do we stay positive in these environments? So as we're going through all this, folks, for those of you that will be joining us live here in a little bit, make sure you're giving us likes, shares, follows, all those things. But before we get too far, as always, I got the big board behind me here. It's the big board for Sticker and a Cause. If you got something you believe in, something you support, something you want other people to know about, you can reach out to us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, all those different social media spots. Our website is the abovethebarpodcast.com, and our email is the abovethebarpodcast@gmail.com. Reach out to us. Let us know what you got going on. We'll let other people know about what you got going on. We love to share that around. So just reach out. I'll let you know where to put that sticker in there, and we'll talk all about it. Now we got to talk about the people that pay the bills around here, folks, and that's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson, Coxsackie, Schoharie, Delmar, Clifton Park. That is North America's largest custom window treatment company. They're handling everything from blinds, shades, shutters, drapery, you name it. They take care of it. And for the month of July, they are doing 25% off of all motorized window treatments. That's right, folks. So if you want to have like the remote or voice activated or put it on your phone, if you reach out to Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson, Coxsackie, Schoharie, Delmar, and Clifton Park, they're going to give you 25% off of that window treatment. And as always, folks, if you're there, you tell them you're there to belly up to the bar, they're going to give you another additional 5% off your order. So make sure you're reaching out to Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson, Coxsackie, Delmar, Clifton Park. Good Lord, Doc, I'm too many of them. It's like when I yell for my children, I realize that I've got so many of them that I can't remember everybody's name. So, all right, Doc, all the house cleaning is done and taken care of. How are things in Jersey today?
Well, it was a fairly nice day. Yesterday was scary because there were some terrible rainstorms, but usually the weather is pretty good in this part of New Jersey. It's not terribly cold or terribly hot, and it is near the beach. When I was a young, I loved to go to the beach, and it was a thrill for me. But I have to admit, as age sets in, it's okay, but I don't have to go.
You're all right. You're all right not going now, huh? You're like, I'm good.
I'm good. It's fun to go out for lunch or dinner. It's fun to walk on the boardwalk somewhat. And it reminds me that as a child, I went to Atlantic City with my parents when I was maybe 10 or 11. And it was amazing. They had these flying horses that leaped off of somewhere and landed. And it was one of the major events. I mean, today it probably wouldn't even be allowed because I'm sure a few of those horses got hurt.
Yeah.
But it was a long time ago, and things like that. Showbiz was really showbiz.
So was it one of these kind of things like they were supposed to look like they were Pegasus, like jumping off and landing and all that?
Probably. There probably was a story behind it, but I was 10 years old and just wanted fudge and ice cream. I wasn't very interested in the origins of these horses, you know.
That part didn't register with you
Right.
at all. So I want to talk a little bit. So you let's start with back here. How long have you been? And I get this wrong all the time, Doc. Let's start with this one. What's the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist? Which one is the PhD?
Well, they both involve a higher level awards and so on and status. So both of them, you're going to have about the same level of training, but the training breaks off somewhat differently when you're going for your doctorate in
Okay.
psychology. You're going to deal a lot with mental issues that you think you can really help the person make some improvement without much or any medication. While if you're going to see someone who is a oh God, the other, yeah,
The other guy.
the other guy, the psychiatrist, they break off in their training much earlier on to go into a focus on medicine. Now,
Gotcha.
they may use medicine and talking therapy, and the psychologist may use talking therapy and medicine. So they
Hmm.
can overlap also. But in the last 20 or 30 years, medicine for psychiatrists has become primary, and talking your way to health is one of the hallmarks of a good clinician.
Okay.
So very, very interesting. The training really does differ along the way. And it's unfortunately, there really aren't enough trained psychologists or psychiatrists right now. There's a real problem in getting enough. What's happened, I don't know if you've watched or seen on TV those ads that will get you somebody to help you with mental health
Right.
on TV, and then you can call in. It's kind of breaking the heart of both psychiatrists and psychologists because people with a year or two of training, it's like trying to make a horse that is, a beautiful horse, but he hasn't really been broken, and you try to get him out for the next, thing that's coming to town, and he can't. He's not strong enough yet.
They're just not prepared for the things that they could
Right,
run into. They're more of a
right.
voice counselor kind of a thing, and not
Yeah.
really a clinician that can handle
A,
these kind of things.
a
Eh,
counselor, I'm sorry,
No,
a
no, please go ahead.
counselor can have some very good general advice, but they haven't weathered really being trained around very sick people and understanding the levels of depth that have to be repaired, so to speak. So,
Now, I got a curiosity question. So, and you may tell me I'm a crazy person here in a minute, and maybe we don't use that term today, but but I've always also noticed that with when you talk about counseling and therapy and all that kind of stuff, I think some people, and I think we see it more today than ever. And I'm curious with you, how many years have you been in this field?
well, also, I should mention my husband also, we work together.
Excellent.
If I tell you how many years I've been in it, then you will be close to knowing how very old I am. So I have to
Well, you're
frame
only
it.
30. You're only 30. Listen,
I,
listen.
I
You're the
wish.
doctor, but I'm going to give you some great advice. I tell everyone that I stopped at 30 because did you know 30 is the only age where you can say one phrase two different ways and nobody questions it? 30 is the only time in your life when you can say, listen, Barbara, I am 30 years old. I completely understand what you're trying to explain to me. Or if I don't feel like understanding, I can go, Barbara, I'm 30 years old. How am I supposed to know that? It's the only time you can
That's
say that.
very good. That's very good. So actually, I'll just say that I have been a therapist over 40 years.
Okay.
So the ballpark is pretty big and pretty long. And before that, I actually taught second grade for a year. And I loved those little kids. I was so enamored with 7-year olds, but it was exhausting too, exhausting. And
I
I
like
had to
that.
drive an hour each way every day. It was very fatiguing. And then I got a chance to get a doctorate at Boston University.
Oh, nice.
So I grabbed it. And my doctorate was actually in education.
Okay.
So I then we moved to New Jersey. We actually had hoped to stay in Boston and talk about the story you might tell someone you're never going to see again. I was thinking about that. I had many people that I've told this story to that I've never seen again because I was really tortured, and I still have some uh, bad moments or days regretting the move. And what happened was, it's kind of weird. Um, Russell and I were invited to dinner to one of the fellows who was on the staff at the hospital where Russell was working in Massachusetts. I'm going to disguise everybody.
Okay.
And when we got to the house, I sort of felt a little off, I guess you could say, or scared. And it turned out that I had brought a much fancier dessert that was the exact same dessert the hostess was feeding us, except it was fancier. Okay.
Oh, no.
So I just dropped, like my gut almost like fell out. And I said to myself in my head, Russell will never make it in this job. He's going to lose it. And 10 months later, 10 or 12 months later, he came home, put his arms around me. I was in the kitchen. The baby was in the playpen. And he said, I lost the job. We're going to have to move. And there, talk about weird things that really do happen. And we came to New Jersey. He got a wonderful job in a local hospital. Then he got a job at a local college, Monmouth, which is now a university. It's a
Oh,
nice
yeah.
place. And he worked with all the students who needed help in any way. And then we both went into private practice together. I had gotten my license. All this took like 15 years to even out. And to this day, I can look back and see that little house we had, which had been like a gardener's house of a bigger house, in the
Okay.
back. Of course, the big house was ripped down, but the little one was still there. And I can see it, and I can feel how happy I was that this was a real sense of not only having achieved our own wisdom with getting degrees, but that we could really be happy here. There were a lot of young couples. There was a church. We're Jewish also, so I'll say there was a
Synagogue.
synagogue we kind of liked. So many things were like right, and then they were just ripped. So I have a tremendous, I think, sensitivity and awareness for how life can present not only the typical things you have to fight for, but you can really get kicked in the behind without, much, much, much happening in your favor. It can happen. It can happen. And it takes a long time to recover from stuff like that.
Well, I can tell you there, Dr. Barbara, is that must have been one heck of a dessert. Like you traumatized that lady. Like your dessert must have been pretty impressive. That you completely traumatized this person where she was like, "Listen, we can't. My dessert game is not strong enough. We can't have Barbara around
Yeah,
no more." So that's
yes.
the other side to look at it
But
is your dessert game must have been that strong
who
that somebody
knows?
couldn't even
Yeah.
have you around. But it's interesting to me, and the reason I asked about your time frame in this field is one of the things I notice when it comes to, as we talk about fighting for personal freedoms, is have you noticed where in your experience in doing this where people have lost, and let's see if I can phrase this right, people have lost the will to fight for personal freedom because they need their diagnosis to be their identity? Does that make sense the way I'm explaining it? Like if you told me, hey Sean, you're you're a no, let me think of a better term. Hey, Sean, you're a narcissist, which I'm not a narcissist in any way, but and then I guess a narcissist would say that too, though. But I guess I don't know.
Don't
But
worry.
if you told me that, and you were treating this, it's almost like that becomes my excuse for everything I do wrong. So then I don't want to be free of this and have my own freedoms. Have you noticed that shift in people where it's not about getting better and moving beyond this, but I need my identity. When you give me a diagnosis, that is my identity.
I don't know. Usually, I don't speak too much about the diagnosis with my clients because they're not usually taking medicine from me. They may be from someone else, but not from me. I do a lot of talk about helping people recognize their talents and get back to their talents. And I feel that one of the most healthy things a person can do is stay appreciating their particular talents rather than letting them be lost. It's not good to lose your talents because there is something about being generous of spirit to yourself that's very important in feeling good. Not giving in to either a bad person you work for or a family member that isn't really treating you right. Now, sometimes, like us moving to New Jersey, I had no choice. I was not ready to divorce my husband with a baby, and I loved him, but I had no choice. I did go to a psychiatrist actually because they worked very close. There were two in the same office. One was sort of one and the other, whatever. Um, and it made a big difference in the way I settled into living in New Jersey. I really could do nothing about it. And once you understand, like if you have to wear, you have to wear a crutch, you have to, whatever, you really understand that's just the way it is, then you can clean house and find your identity. And I really spread my wings. Not only did I get my license as a psychologist, but I started to create. Some of the things were a little bit crazy. I kept diaries of all my dreams for a couple of years. I just found that very interesting. I wrote a lot of short stories that have never gone anywhere that I just thought were very interesting. Sometimes people I had met, things like that. And I developed friendships with some very lovely women. Some are still my friends. And let's say I came to terms. I came to terms. And now, as I'm growing older, I became a filmmaker. That's my latest step out of the ordinary. I found that I think I always wanted to be a filmmaker, even as a kid, but of course I couldn't do it. But I found a way in. The world had changed, and the way in was the phones that we have. I never could have been a filmmaker if it weren't for these phones, because I didn't know a thing about really using the expensive material stuff that people use if they're making a real film, and all the lighting and the wires and this and that. I took a chance and had a young girl. I had written a simple script about growing up, and I asked her to go home and, on her own time, take her phone, which was only a 6 at that point. It was very low level, but it worked, iPhone, and take what I've written that I want you to say, more or less, but in your own words, and let's see if we can make a movie. And she went home and did it in her backyard, her garden, her basement, and that show got noted in a very significant happening that was for festivals. She did it. I was just the kind of overseer, like when the garden has already have all the blooms out. I was there, and she's gone on. She's become quite a well-known actress.
Who
But
was
that
it?
was, I'm not going to say her name because I don't have a good release on. She might not want me to, you know,
Okay.
you know. So, but she's out there, and if you really want it, I'll get it for you privately. She's very
Yeah, we
nice.
can talk. We can talk about that. So now, when you talk about the filmmaking, I know, and again, folks, we got Dr. Barbara Becker Holstein. If you have any questions for her, please drop a question in there or comment. Uh, we're also going to talk about, you've got your second book. You've got Women's Freedom: The Dawn of Possibility, and Women's Freedom: Unfinished Love Stories. Now, kind of staying with this theme of personal freedoms, you've mentioned a couple times things you felt like when you were in your youth you couldn't have done just because the technology wasn't readily available. It sounds like, also though, when it comes to this writing side, did you feel like that was something like you also couldn't do? Like, hey, my writing, even though I want to do it, it's a personal freedom that I can't let other people know about.
No, completely the opposite. And I think that's because my mother was a natural writer. She wrote some terrific stories. And my father was a public speaker. He was wonderful if he had to speak, at a council meeting or whatever. He was a dean at a couple of universities. So they were very, very fluid people with using their voice. And I actually insisted when I was 9 that my mother take me downtown, and I bought a Girl Scout diary because I was also a Girl Scout. And for 3 years, every day I wrote in that diary. It is the most boring thing you would ever read. Dear diary, today I had breakfast. Today I had cereal. I went to school. My father dropped me off. It was raining. That was on and on and on. But that was the origins of something within me. And by the time I was in high school, I wrote some pretty serious poems and a couple of short stories, not much. But in college, it continued and it continued. And then when I had this move, it was still there as a way of kind of healing, when I was keeping my dreams and stuff. And then one day, eventually, I moved on to a little book for girls, very attached to young girls, in the sense that a lot of the research had shown that young girls kind of lost their energy and their sense of wisdom about themselves. And basically, the boys went ahead in high school better than the girls. And girls, got caught up in dating and so on, and even things that weren't so good, like unexpected pregnancy. And there's always been some horrors that girls have had to face more than boys, at certain times. A boy could go out with somebody and something could happen, no one else might ever know. But you couldn't get pregnant without your mother and father knowing, you know.
This is true. That's a kind of
And
a harder one to hide.
these sorts of freedoms are really critical to one's identity. That's why I felt a couple of years ago when I wrote the littler book that you mentioned, I wanted to help women recognize for their own kids and maybe grandkids, don't give up a right to make your own decision, your own medical decisions. Not telling you what to do. You believe certain ways, do it. That's fine. But don't give up your right. I never have told
That's
you.
definitely one of those subjects that we talk about in my house. People's personal rights to. I've always been of that mindset. I am a completely personally pro life, but
Mm-hmm.
your right to pro choice, if that makes sense. Like that's not my
Yeah,
business. Like
right.
in my household, I'll tell you
Right.
what it is, but in
Yeah.
your household, that's not my business to have that choice. That like, how dare I? That's the way I look at that one.
Yeah. And if you want to try to persuade, you're allowed to do that too.
That's
I'm
a great
just
thing about being
saying,
an American, isn't it? Like
yeah,
we get to do that, and at no point in time should anyone have the fear that someone's going to club you like a baby seal because you want to tell someone else your thoughts. And if they
right.
don't like your thoughts, they have absolutely the right to walk away from it and don't have the
Exactly.
right to attack you for your thoughts.
That's
It's a
right.
very unique thing that people I see it in the media all the time where again back to what you're saying there's personal freedoms. Like do you have the right to a personal freedom anymore to even say, "Hey, Miss Barbara and I don't agree on the same thing." That's perfectly fine.
Right.
But we both might like chocolate chip cookies. And if we can at least like chocolate chip cookies together, we can still sit down and hang out. We don't have to agree on everything. I tell people all the time,
No.
my best friend in the entire world is is far left. I'm probably middle right. I still love the dude. I don't care.
Mhm.
And that's one of those personal freedoms. With that, in your experiences, that I want to kind of stay on that line of thinking here for a second. How do you think people like and you talk about it with young girls and with the books you wrote. And again, folks, if you want to check out Dr. Barbara Becker Holstein's books, she has two of them. It's now is it eventually going to be a series or is it just
It
where you
might
just do these?
be. I'm hoping to make a film about one of the books, the one that you just named before, because it's so easy. I found it so easy to make an interesting story in that particular book. So I am in the midst of trying to set it up to be a film.
Is that the Dawn of Possibilities or the
Yes,
Unfinished Love Stories? Dawn of
yeah.
Possibilities. I haven't read it, but I'll tell you, I love the name of it, Dawn of Possibilities. And now, as I'm reading what these are about, so it's Dawn of Possibilities. Let's say set in the 1960s, following Madison and Ginger as they step into college life filled with excitement, uncertainty, romance, and life altering decisions. Now,
And they
are they
did.
in Boston or are they in Jersey?
They went to school. I mean, they're imaginary, but they went to school
Nice.
in New York City,
Okay.
and which is a very busy place. They went in the early 60s, and they were confronted by numerous young men and other issues that came up. And neither girl really wanted to return to her childhood place. They both came from Texas, but they didn't know each other.
Okay.
But they came from families of difficulty, I'll put it that way. So they were both trying to find ways to come into their own. And that's a
Okay.
typical story. I mean, I went to college in New York. First, I went to Smith, which is in Massachusetts. And this is also the kind of thing that I would only admit when I was younger. If I was sitting on a plane for 12 hours with a stranger. But I hated Smith. The people were wonderful, the psychologists, the teachers, everyone there was really nice. But there was one big problem. There were
What was
no
that?
boys that went there.
Oh
It
my
was
goodness.
only girls. And
Oh,
I was not happy. I was not happy. So
uh,
I transferred to a school in New York City, Barnard, which was only
I know
girls, but
Barnard.
it was in the
I've heard of it.
city. It was in the city. And
That's too
yes,
funny.
there were boys. And one of the,
Better that way, huh?
yeah, one of the funny things was that I had a boy who was not a boyfriend. This, like, you have friends and then you have boyfriends. He was a friend, and he liked me. I liked him. We hung out. We had no one else to hang out with. And one weekend, I was away, and when I came back, he said to me something like, "Well, what happened to you? Did you meet somebody from Afghanistan?" And the truth was that I
From
had. I
from
had met this
Afghanistan?
fellow. I had met this fellow from Afghanistan,
Well,
and I
that's such
bet
a
you
weird.
can.
Wow.
Yeah, you can imagine that my mother and father were not happy with this.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine, in the 1960s, young Jewish girl meeting some random Muslim guy from Afghanistan was not top on their list of like
No, it wasn't.
future son-in-law material right there.
Right, right. He was the only fellow that my father said I could never bring back to the house.
Wow, really?
Mhm.
Now, when you talk about personal freedoms, though, and we discuss that, you know, moving, think I want to kind of like a Barbara if you were, 2026 Barbara at that
Yeah.
age, would you have still? Do you think you still would have followed along with that
Well,
compared to the '60s Barbara?
I'll tell you what happened for me because it ties into the whole topic of going for mental health and understanding your mind. I was talking to a psychologist at Barnard. They had some free people that came aboard and you could sign up and whatever. And this fellow said to me, "What concerns me is that your boyfriend is of a different culture, may go back to a different world at some point, and sometimes that's very hard emotionally on the recipient. It's very hard to adjust to all these changes." Well, that did it for me. That did it. 2 days
That's
later, I
interesting.
had broken up
I just find
because,
this absolutely fascinating. I have to tell you that this entire part of this is one of the most. So first off, I just wouldn't have thought about somebody from Afghanistan in New York City in the '60s. That doesn't register in my head. But that's interesting. So just because of that portion to it, it was like that was enough for you to say, "Yeah, I guess it is. It ain't gonna work."
I was afraid. I became afraid. I think rightly so. It would take someone with a much stronger, maybe someone who just had lived outdoors on a farm or whatever, different things that I had never experienced. And it was
Gotcha.
too much for me.
That's interesting. And I guess so. I'm curious then, how much of those type of experiences are in the book or influence
A
your
lot.
thoughts?
Well, a lot, but I think when I work as a psychologist, I'm always looking in my own mind. I'm not necessarily telling my client. I'm trying to judge what is this woman's stamina? What can she really handle? What is she telling me about what she needs in her life? And sometimes I don't have to say a word. I mean, some people are really strong. I had one woman with a difficult husband. She finally got rid of him and went off on airplane rides with her girlfriends. I think a couple of them learned how to fly. I
Oh,
mean, she was built like of stone, but that's not the way most people are built. You have to get a judge of what's going to work for the combination of talents and hurts that the person is telling you about. And I try to do that so they can fly. They can fly in their own way.
that's absolutely fascinating. Kind of the other side to the coin. have you ever felt like you had the need to tell someone like, "Hey, you're taking the personal freedoms a little too far"? Does that make sense? Where they were just kind of they went from this, and we used to see it. So I think I might have mentioned it. I 20 years in the Marine Corps, and we used to see it with young Marines all the time, where they came from Midwest or very super conservative areas, and then they show up even in Jacksonville, North Carolina, or San Diego, and all of a sudden the genie's out of the bottle. Pandora's box is open. There's no putting them back. Have you ever experienced that on the other side where you're like, hey, these personal freedoms, this one might not be worth fighting for. Let's roll that back.
I have, but not as often as the other way. Um, I've had people who can't make good judgment decisions. And usually that will go back to poor training in the house somewhere along the way growing up. But I might spend a lot of time trying to help someone to get better a better handle on recognizing who's safe to be friends with, who isn't so safe, and stuff like that. So I guess I'm kind of halfway toward what you're saying, but um,
I'm curious. You
usually,
just said something about how do you train? I mean, to me, I got lucky growing up, and I've always had a good gut feeling. I know, like when you said walking in with the dessert, you knew the second you hit the door, something in your gut didn't feel right.
right, right.
And I've always had that training in my life where I knew if it looked like a duck and quacked like a duck, it was a duck. I knew where I was at. So how do you teach that to somebody to understand that, like, hey, not all the people that smile at you are your friends, and not all the people who you think mean you harm. How do you train that to
Yes.
somebody?
Well, yeah, it is case by case. If somebody um, is showing signs of poor judgment, then I'm going to be looking very carefully how she is really judging her things that she brings up with me. But otherwise, it might be another thing like she doesn't know how to get the best job that she deserves. So we might be working on helping her understand that you're not going to be hired if you don't get the right training. You can't just say, I want to be a librarian.
Mhm.
No, they're not going to let you in unless you get maybe the 1 year degree or something. And so a lot of times people are just like innocents. Their families are not equipped to give them some of the early tools to know, how to push ahead if you want to, and or to learn certain skill sets. It's good to learn hobbies. It's good to play an instrument, to be in the band with a big drum when when the games come. Even if you're never going to make a dime with music, it's still good to be part of that. You know,
Absolutely.
it's a lot of filling in where parents have left off with their kids. So a good psychologist and a good psychiatrist will be filling in a lot of the time. You can do it. That's great. I'm so glad you signed up for, whatever, the
Fill
band.
in the
That's
blank.
good.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's very versatile.
And I've heard you say a couple of times she. So do you focus mostly on women and women's situation?
Yeah, I have had probably 80% of my clientele has been female and 20% males. My husband has had, of course, tons of men. A lot of men want to see a man. It's understandable.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and he's had a lot of women too, because historically, women went more often for help than men as far as mental issues. So, yeah, I right now I have a very small practice because the years are folding in, and I do want to make some more films. I want to see this book turn into a film. I've got things I want to do. And just like you being in the Marines, right? The Marines, you could probably have stayed another 20 years and risen, but you may not have wanted to. There's a lot of, time goes and you have to portion what you want to do with it.
100%. Yeah, I hit my 20-year mark, and I knew that was where I needed to get to, and it was going to give me the ability to fight for my own personal freedoms that I wanted. Like, okay, I have these benefits now that I can now move on to these other things. But you also mentioned, that most of your clientele has been women, not so much men. As far as these freedoms are concerned, do you see a lot, and does it come up in any of your books where, men being caught in the patriarchy kind of construct that doesn't allow them to move beyond it and be able to express some of those own personal freedoms and personal feelings in that same way?
Well, I've had men whose parents were very difficult. And I think when the parents are difficult, whether it's a boy or a girl, it ends up with problems. You know, good parents, just good enough, like there's this expression, good enough. If your parents are good enough, even if they have some creepy things they do once in a while, or, they stay, they, whatever, even if there's a little too much drinking, but it's all confined to the right, you know,
Right.
weekend, it can be okay. They don't have to be perfect at all. They have to be good enough.
Yes. Well, you bring up a great point right there, and I think we have this whole social construct since social media has come along where you know we see the perfect parent on TV and the perfect people on there, and well, why aren't mine that way? It's got to be their fault that I'm this way. Never taking that ownership towards it. That that way we don't have to, well, I can blame that on me being this way and never taking that ownership for the decisions we've made. How do we even? I know this is a little bit of a left turn on this one, but you got me thinking about. See, Doc, you got me even thinking. This was not supposed to be a therapy session for me. This was not what this was supposed to be. You got me over here thinking about things, but in that sense, how do you get people to take ownership for those things?
It's very hard sometimes, particularly with men. And there's a problem like with maybe a man has two women in his life, except he never bothered to tell one of them that there was another one. You know, uh,
Dude,
and,
were you talking to my grandfather? Were you talking to my grandfather or something like that?
and they will not give up their stand till there's havoc. They're usually very hard to get them off into understanding a lot of the subtleties. But there are plenty of men that are just the opposite. They come, they listen very carefully, and they really want to try to lessen the repetitive things they're doing that are not working.
I could agree with that. It's that they it's always attributed with it, but I don't think he actually said it. Einstein on what is it?
Right.
Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and
Yeah.
expecting a different result. We always attribute it to him, but then I've read something recently. It was like, there's no evidence he actually ever said that.
Okay.
We just attribute it to him. But we're getting close to closing time here at the bar, folks. Real quick, one giant leap. Before we get back into the show, here's a little piece of history. On July 20th, 1969, the world watched as humanity took its first step on the moon. I told you guys this earlier. It was a moment that provided what can happen when vision, determination, and craftsmanship comes together. That's just like you, Dr. Barber. Vision, determination, and craftsmanship. At New Scotland Spirits, they believe that the best things are built the same way, not by cutting corners, but by getting the details right. Every bottle is handcrafted in small batches right here in upstate New York, using locally sourced grain and a dedication to quality that's evident in every sip. So this week, as you remember one of history's greatest achievements, raise a glass to the pioneers, the dreamers, and the people who were willing to take the next great steps, like Dr. Barber with making
Oh,
movies and
thank
books and
you.
everything. Visit newscotlandspirits.com to find your next bottle. New Scotland Spirits, celebrating the spirit of exploration, one exceptional pour at a time. I'm telling you,
Beautiful.
I had to tie you right into that, Dr. Barber. You're taking the first pours and the first leaps. But yeah, back to your book and how this all kind of ties together. So as you're writing this and you're putting together, again, folks, if you want to know about Dr. Barber's book, she's got Women's Freedom, the Dawn of Possibilities and Women's Freedom, Unfinished Love Stories. When you're putting this whole thing together, um, what was the actual goal in it? Was it just to get the story out? Was it to, hey, get the story out so I can make a movie? What was our goal here?
Well, I felt very, very intensely around putting in a theatrical form some of the issues that girls face so that hopefully the women, particularly women, grandmothers, mothers, would read the books and see for themselves some of the problems and thoughts going through girls' heads as they're teenagers, and perhaps be a little more compassionate or interested or suddenly more willing to share some of their own past. You just have a better sense of connection. It's really connecting the parents to the daughters. Yes, I would like to make money, but I have to say honestly, I'm not the best money winner in this world. you know. I mean, of course, I made money and I make money when I see clients, but I haven't found the miracle to, having a bestseller, for example. You know,
That's a tough one right there. We've had it
yeah,
just recently had Kathy Nash on, and she's a writer and a publisher along with Kristen Manna, and that was one of the things we talked about is uh, you know, there's a million books written. We might hear about 5 or 10 of them every
right.
year, unless somehow your book gets dropped on Oprah's lap. No one,
Yes,
yeah, no one knows what your story is. So when you write, you really have to write for you first, and then everybody else afterwards. Um, as you're putting this together and you're getting this book together, now only because I know his name because you said it. How did Dr. Russell take it? Was he like, yeah, go write a book? I got other things going on, or was he like, was he part of the writing process? How did he feel as he was going through this?
well, I've been writing books for at least 20 years, and I can say when we owned our house, now we're renting, but I could say that almost every night when I was writing a different book, a mystery story uh, that I still am trying to push at times, next year in Jerusalem, it has nothing to do with the fighting or all that stuff, but it has to do with two young women that go to Israel and discover some stuff. But anyway, I'd be writing, and my mother had passed away that year, and I always felt that she helped me write that book, even though she was deceased. The writing came like so unbelievably every time I sat down. And from upstairs, Russell would be saying, Barbara, when are you coming up? That's how he helped.
Now,
That's it.
where's Russell? Where's Russell originally from?
Pittsburgh.
Oh, that explains everything. I'm a Baltimore guy. We don't do nothing with people out in Pittsburgh. Ugh, ugh. We just it's out in Pittsburgh. That's like the Ravens' mortal enemies, Steelers. Ugh. We don't do nothing with them. That explains everything. That's all I needed to know. But so you're going through this process. You're putting the book together. Uh, we've got a couple minutes left here. What are some of the things that you hope people take from these stories when they're reading about these two girls and their adventures in New York City? What are some of the things you're hoping they're taking from this?
Well, I hope some of it is pure humor and enjoyment. I have I've developed some characters, and one of the characters is a senior man who loves to come to dinner with where the two girls live. Very nice man, but he insists on bringing a globe like you would read, when you're with a seance with him because he claims that his
His crystal
crystal
ball.
ball is going to help in talking. They're going to all join in. And the girls sort of go along with it, even though it's slightly creepy. And indeed, every time he comes, they hear something, sounds like somebody's talking from the crystal ball. And to make it even more creepy, it's stuff that the girls sort of need to hear. So it's unclear. There's like a stream of a mystery related to that whole thing. And in the movie version, I haven't put it in yet because I don't know how much I can afford. And nowadays you have to pay to make a movie. No one's gonna, unless
Oh
you're
yeah.
famous. But I can just see how it would be so funny to have a scene where he brings the crystal ball and the girls are trying to serve the food and they hear this talking and they don't know where it's coming from. And it would make a great scene.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
so at the same time, I'm sort of thinking about some of the scenes that I want to put in. And I want some of them to be interesting and funny. It's not all hard stuff.
You should, you know what you should do, what you should find. There was a movie probably about, gosh, 10, 15 years ago, maybe even longer, called Mystery Men. And it was about like all these unlikely superheroes. None of them were like normal superheroes, but one of the characters was known as Baby Bowler because her father was the bowler. And
Uh,
she had a bowling ball that inside of the bowling ball was a skull, and it was her father. It was her father who was the bowler's skull, and that would make such a great like him walking around with his crystal ball was actually a bowling ball with a skull inside of
yeah,
it that he felt like that. See, you laughed at that. That would be hilarious to me. Like
yeah,
this
yeah.
little old man who's like everyone's like, he's walking around with the bowling ball again. Whose head is really in there? And that would be absolutely hilarious to me. But I get that. So you're what it sounds like to me is you're hoping that from this people are able to, besides a little bit of humor, but a little bit of practical application of life and kind of things, that can be gleaned from a past and brought forward in a practical way still.
And maybe for mothers and grandmothers that read my books, it'll open the door for more easy conversation with their daughters and even a niece if she's visiting. I mean, I like to make people feel more relaxed about sharing themselves with each other.
Now, when you say feel a little bit easier conversation, what do you mean?
Well, sometimes parents never tell their kids what they did at that age. It can be very helpful to know that, you know, uh, maybe somebody stole some things from a store at 16 and had to go and do some, I don't know, helping somewhere to work it off of their license or whatever. But there's no need to feel any shame. It can help the youngster feel more comfortable to be truthful and understanding about whatever his or her life is like. A lot of times parents don't give enough easy time of chit chat. I know my parents, sometimes when we were in the car, they'd start talking, even if they had lost a job 20 years ago, just sharing it with the kids as they're driving. It can mean a lot to kids to know more about their parents.
It
So
makes
this,
you human.
yeah, yeah,
I love that. It makes you a little more human. And sometimes kids can look at you like, well, my parents have never done anything wrong, or
yeah,
they're boring. They have no idea that you know that you at at 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night on a random like, Friday you decided to drive to Myrtle Beach and sleep on the beach and hang out, and they don't know you ever did those things. Yeah, no, I like that. Hint, hint, wink, wink, kids. I did those things. Uh,
yeah,
your, your
yeah.
your dad your dad did that, so that's interesting. if somebody was looking for the book, they were interested in it, where could they find it at?
Yeah, it's on Amazon very prominently. Just look up my name, Barbara Becker Holstein, and Amazon, and they'll be thrilled to send a copy out.
And they should buy multiple copies at once, correct?
I would love
They
it.
should. Listen, folks, when you order, you're supposed to order at least 5 to 7 copies at a time. Barbara doesn't care what you do with the copies, but you need to order those. You could use them to hold up a table for all she cares. She just needs you to order 5 to 7 copies at a time. How about if somebody was looking to book you or any kind of speaking engagements or anything like that coming around?
Absolutely. I loved your talk. I had fun tonight. I loved it.
It's a little different. I always try to tell you, guys, it's a little different than the average podcast.
Scared, but you became very nice and normal very fast, so it was fun.
See, now my kids would never believe you. You said my dad's nice and normal. That's not my dad. They would never believe any of those things. But if somebody wanted to book you for speaking, or do you have any speaking engagements or signings coming up?
I have not so much that I can tell offhand, but I know I have a writing about being an entrepreneur, which I feel I am, that Wendy has set up for me. That's a written thing that I have to do in a couple.
Okay.
I'm going to try to take care of it next week. But just, my email is the quickest way to me. Barbara.Holstein@gmail.com. And I only will ignore it if someone is weird, But honestly, I love to hear from people.
And listen, folks, you got to be really weird because she talked to me. So, I mean, that explains everything. We're good there. Well, listen, folks, as always, if you found Dr. Barber through us or us through Dr. Barber, make sure you're giving this a like, share, a follow, all those different cliche things. And I know that's what everybody thinks when they hear it, but trust me, that's how the algorithms work. That's how this whole process works. You share it with somebody, you hit that like, share, and follow, and people find out all about what's going on and how these things happen. And we do this every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very few Wednesdays do I miss. I do have one coming up here soon, but excuse me, very few times do we miss it. Next week, we have another Marine like myself coming on, gentleman by the name of Cliff Sososman, Sosman. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Again, he's a Marine. But he does professional speaking about execution under pressure. He also has a podcast called Tailgate Chat. We're going to be talking about execution under pressure. How do you handle these different situations? And probably going to talk a little bit about how you translate things that we've seen in the service, where I talk about this all the time, where people don't have to listen to you anymore just because your rank's bigger than theirs. You have to be able to actually communicate and find the right way for people to work with you. So make sure you're tuning in with us next week, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, Dr. Barber, we do this every week. And in case you didn't know, at the end of every episode, and don't log off right after this, we're going to talk for a minute after the show, but the guest always gets the final word every episode. So what's our final word tonight?
I would say that my final word to the audience is look at your whole life, take a piece of paper, write down all your talents, and take another piece of paper, write down your dreams that you would still like to achieve, and go for at least one or two of them. Just do it. You'll be so happy.
Alrighty, folks, be sure to push your stool in.
This has been a Second Front podcast presentation found on Apple, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found.